To In Depth with ISU softball coach Cristal Brown. I'm Jerry Miller, and we're going to be talking with Coach Brown about ISU softball today. And first of all, Coach, let me ask you, this is a tough time. How are you staying connected with all of your players?
Just in today's day and age, there's so many that they're used to using all the social media and the texting, and they're handling this whole kind of computer phone interaction a lot better than I am, or I think older generations are. So we're doing Zoom calls with all of us once a week. And then I'm making sure to interact with them more individually, checking in on classes and things like that. And then, of course, I'm sure that they're staying interacted with one another on things like Snapchat and the latest TikTok stuff. Those things I'm not so up to date on, but I think, like I said, I think they handle that easier than I do.
I know volleyball coach Sammy Stewart took off to northern Utah to her family's ranch when we learned that we wouldn't be able to be around each other and still be safe. Where did you abscond off to?
Yeah, so I had not sold my place in Spokane. It's a place out on some acreage. And so that's where I took off to, and it's just a great place. I can do some little hikes right out the back door and let my animals run around, and so it's a good place to kind of self-isolate.
You say animals. Tell us how many you've got. What are they?
I've got 2 dogs. I've got a almost 14-year-old chocolate lab named Chip that has been with me since he was 6 weeks old. And then I've got almost exactly, his birthday's coming up, 3-year-old chocolate labradoodle that is a hit out there at the Bart's Park dog park. And then I've got 8 chickens, but I'll spare you their names. They are all named, but and they keep me in good eggs. So I didn't even have to dye eggs yesterday.
Oh, that's a good thing. Let's talk about the timeline of how everything happened. I was in Boise with the men's basketball team. The Bengals were getting ready for their second game of the tournament and had just come back from practice at the arena when we were told the tournament was being canceled. We were all going home. Tell us where you and the softball players were and how all of this information came to you.
Yeah, a whirlwind. We had just come back from a very successful trip to Fort Collins. It was probably the best weekend. It was not even probably. It was the best weekend we had put together thus far. And we had some days off. And then the first day we were getting ready, I think it might have been a Tuesday, that we were getting ready to take the field, some text messages from other conferences across the nation had started coming out about canceling the remainder of their seasons and things like that. We'd already been in communication. We were supposed to go play a tournament at LMU. It was hosted by LMU in Northridge. And they had already been communicating to us that they weren't going to allow spectators like that. But it was actually via social media that my girls started to kind of get concerned before we ever went out to practice that what was going to happen. And we got out there and said, the one thing we know of today is that we get to practice today. And so that was our mindset, and we put our phones away, and we had what came to be one last practice as a group that day. It was a beautiful day out at Miller Ranch, and we had a good time and worked hard. And by the end of that day, things rapidly started getting canceled. And like I said, that was our last practice.
If I'm not mistaken, you had played somewhere just above 20 games to that point in the season?
It's about right, yep.
And I know you had won 7 of those games and a few games against some pretty good programs. You've beaten San Diego State in California, you beat Purdue, and you beat Colorado State. Talk about the games that you played, and especially those that you won and what you saw overall in your season that you really, really liked.
Yeah. So, we had some key wins, like in the Mary Nutter, as you mentioned. The San Diego State game was a ton of fun. I mean, just in that environment, and They brought in a Oregon transfer that was very well known and is a great pitcher. And we actually scored the tying and go ahead run off of her. And so those were some big moments. And even, all the way up to even the last tournament we played in, we had continually talked about, even though our record wasn't showing it, we felt like we were beating ourselves more than teams were beating us. We were having some defensive innings that we would just kind of fall apart, maybe one inning a game. And so we really had this mindset that we were good enough to be able to compete well in every game that we were entering. And our last weekend, we were finally able to really show that. We got the first day in, I think that the other teams in that tournament in Fort Collins, I think they were planning on us being the weakest team there, and yet we were the only team to leave that opening day not losing a game. And so that was a lot of fun, and to beat Purdue. And for the seniors this year, that was the first time that they had beat Colorado State. So that was another key win for them. And so we felt like we were, what we had been talking about, not being able to put a full 7 innings together, that we were finally doing that on a consistent basis in that tournament in Fort Collins. And so we were excited to carry that into the next and last preseason tournament and then start conference.
How tough was it to have to end your season without playing one game at home at Miller Ranch Stadium?
Yeah, I think, I don't think we even focused a whole lot on not being able to play at home. I think that when it's taken away from you, you don't even care where you're going to play. Of course, it would have been nice to, I was talking to Fenn, and Fenn had mentioned we were on a call, and he said, man, we should all be out on the berm right now watching some games. And of course, those would have been great memories. But, we just want to play with whoever could watch us, and wherever we could play would have been nice.
Well, Coach Fenn has reserved seats out on the right field berm, just so you know.
I've heard.
When we do get back into Miller Ranch Stadium, it'll be great. From the games that you've played and what you've seen from the players, what areas do you know you have to improve on for next season, whenever that might be?
Yeah, I think that pitching depth is always the key factor in softball seasons. You've got to have more than one pitcher that can start games and give you significant innings in those starts. And so that's the key is getting our returning pitchers better and making sure that our incomers are going to be able to contribute significantly, so that we can get some, 2 or 3 pitchers that can start and give us 4 or 5 innings, and then have some people who could come in and finish off those games. So we've got a staff for sure, and we just need to make sure that we can find a combination that works in that way. And then I think that one of the tough things, and of course everybody talks about it when you're playing in a region, we don't get to be out on the dirt prior to the start of season. Defense is always a little bit slow. We do our best to work details indoors in the environments that we're given, and we've been able to put together some successes that way, but that's the part that we need to be able to clean up, especially if we're looking at this season. We just had some defensive innings that hurt us. We're able to do a lot of hitting indoors, and so our bats come out pretty good at the beginning of the season, and I was pleased with where we were. So, so a lot of pitching and defense we're going to have to clean up.
Tell us about the kids that stepped up this year who became leaders you are going to be looking to in the future.
Yeah, so, I think a big one now on everybody's radar is Miley Newman. Not just as a pitcher, and she's fired up to work these next several months and stronger, but she contributed a huge bat for us. I mean, to kind of not have a hitting role at all her freshman year, and probably not expecting that this year, and for us to work her into hitting and practice, and then kind of give her some pinch hitting roles in which she did a fabulous job, and then moved into the 3-hole for us on a consistent basis and delivered some huge hits. That was exciting. We've got some freshmen that have done great this year in the 1-2 spots in our lineup, both freshman players. And so they've contributed in a big way. Issa Cargill and Morgan Hess, both in the outfield, and did great offensively. So we've got a really good core, among others. I could keep going on and on, but we've got a great core group coming back.
Talk about players that you have recruited and signed that will be coming on board for the next season.
So we've got 8 incoming at this point, and we've got 2 pitchers, Emma Montoya and Katie, and they're both going to be great contributors. They played high-level travel ball for a significant amount of years out of California, and so they'll bring in some great experience. We've got some speed coming in, all but one. We've got one pokey kid, but most of our girls are coming from California. We've got a couple of key outfielders coming in. Aspen Frey out of Los Angeles County will come in, lefty, speed, and contribute. We've got some utility players. Jillian Martinez is going to be able to catch and play outfield. And so we've got a lot of good, experienced young athletes that are going to be competing right away. And more than that, they're just great girls who are going to help us kind of continue to create the character and the culture that we want ISU softball to be known for. And that's probably the thing I'm most proud of. These girls are all going to come in with 3.5 plus, most of them very close to 4.0 GPAs. And so that's going to be exciting.
Well, Coach, tell us how you expect your team overall to be different next season than it was this year.
Well, as I mentioned, I think that you're going to find that our academics and our culture and things like that are going to be continuing to improve. But I think we're going to be more versatile overall on the field. We're going to have players that can have a lot of tools. They're going to be able to play multiple positions. We're going to have the opportunity to kind of say, who are our top 9 bats? And then we can kind of put a defense together around those bats. So we found ourselves in some situations this year where we felt like we really needed certain individuals out on defense, but it maybe wasn't our greatest lineup. And next year, I think we're going to be well-rounded enough that we're not going to have that problem. We're going to be able to match up a full 9 great bats with really strong defense.
As we wrap up today, in terms of building a program, there are a lot of different factors that go into the game of softball. Of course, you've got pitching, you've got offense, you've got defense, you've got speed on the bases. Rank those priority-wise, what you look to build first and be the anchor of your program.
I as much as you don't always want to admit it, I'd be wrong if I wasn't saying that it was pitching. The fact of the matter is that at this level of softball, you've got to have pitching. I mean, you can't have team ERAs that sit around, hover around 6. Even the best of offenses sometimes are going to hit the ball right at people, even if you're hitting them hard. And so we need a pitching staff that can stay at a team ERA of under 3, preferably. With that, I know then that we can put next most important would be offense. I know that we can get enough runs on the board to support a staff that way. And then I think you just play routine defense. And so those are typically how we go, understand that the pressure is in the circle, and we'll always have offense that can score, and then just make those plays that you should be making every day.
Coach Brown, on a personal note, I was greatly disappointed not to be able to be in the press box at Miller Ranch Stadium and do the public address announcing again this season for you guys, but I'm looking forward to seeing the Bengals back out at Miller Ranch in uniform, taking on Big Sky and other non-conference opponents. And I know all of the Burn Bums are too. We can't wait until you get back to Pocatello with your players and start working on the next season.
I appreciate it, Jerry. We're excited too, and it's going to be a long counting down the days.
Coach, thanks for taking the time. It's been a great pleasure to be able to go in depth with our softball coach, Cristal Brown. Thank you.